Hi everyone, I'm Yee Ching from Group 11. Today my group members and I will be going to discuss about the topic critical thinking should be taught from the primary school. So first of all, what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the ability to question, analyze, interpret, and evaluate information to make logical informed decisions. It involves actively applying, synthesizing, and assessing knowledge from observation, experience, and reasoning. Rather than simply accepting facts, critical thinkers challenge assumptions, consider different perspectives, and form sound judgments. This skill is essential in education, work, decision making, and problem solving, helping the individuals navigate the complexities of the modern world responsibly.
So, why critical thinking must focus on primary school? It is because of the children aged 6 to 12 are in a period of rapid brain development, making it the ideal time to shape how they learn and think. Introducing critical thinking early help them build strong learning habits focused on understanding rather than memorizing. It also supports their social and emotional growth, allowing them to express their idea clearly and confidently. At the same time, early practice encourages creativity and independence, helping the children become a logical thinker who can explore, question, and solve the problem effectively.
The benefits of teaching critical thinking to primary school students is to improve problem solving and decision making skills from a young age. Students are able to assess situations more rationally, identify the root causes, evaluate the options, and determine the most suitable solution for this situation. It can also help them on learning how to anticipate possible outcomes, which in turn can be helping them in making more thoughtful decisions when assessing a situation. The second is better ability to analyze situations and resolve problems. So, with the ability of critical thinking, students can break down complex situations and understand them and find a more effective solution towards the problem. Third is that it encourages self learning. So, by introducing primary school students to critical thinking, this helps them to nurture a questioning mind, which in turn can help them become more curious and actively seek for information for their self learning in order to solve questions which they have on their minds. The fourth is that it develops the foundation of cognitive skills in young minds. So it promotes logical reasoning in young minds and the ability to evaluate information accurately and the skills of connecting different ideas to gain deeper understanding which supports their personal growth. And that's all from me. I'll be passing it to the next person.
Teaching critical thinking from primary school also supports children's personal development. First, it builds confidence because kids learn to explain their ideas and ask questions instead of just giving memorized answers. It also encourages independent thinking. Children start making their own decisions and forming their own opinions, which helps them become more responsible as they grow. Another big benefit is developing empathy and perspective taking. When children learn to consider different viewpoints, they become more understanding and less egocentric. Critical thinking also improves emotional control and decision making. Kids learn to think before reacting, which reduces impulsive behavior. Overall, early critical thinking helps children grow into more confident, thoughtful, and emotionally balanced individuals.
Going to the next slide, teaching critical thinking from primary school brings strong benefits for both the society and the future workforce. First, it helps students become ethical and responsible citizens because they learn to think about consequences and make fair, thoughtful decisions. Next, it also reduces groupthink, stereotyping, and confirmation bias by encouraging students to look at core issues from these different perspectives instead of following mere assumptions. Another benefit of starting up critical thinking from primary school is that it strengthens the ability to detect misinformation, where in today's digital world, false information and fake news spreads very quickly. In addition, it prepares the future workforce with essential decision-making skills that employers really value in organizations nowadays, such as problem solving, reasoning, and independent thinking. Overall, introducing critical thinking early helps shape individuals who can make informed choices and contribute positively to the society. According to Fashion, critical thinking is the foundation for sound judgment and responsible citizenship.
I will explain how critical thinking can actually be taught in primary school. Many people think critical thinking is difficult, but We can introduce it in simple and engaging way. First, teacher can encourage students to ask questions instead of giving direct answers. Teacher can ask why do you think so or what might happen next. This helps children learn to think deeper and explore multiple possibilities. Second, through basic critical reading, when students read story, teachers can guide them to identify the main idea, compare characters, or ask the message of the story. These are small steps, but they build analytical skill early. Third, mind map. They allow children to organize information visually. For example, students can create a mind map about animal, food group, or a story plot. This strengthens logical thinking and pattern recognition. Fourth, teacher can assign very small research tasks. For instance, asking students to find out fact about their favorite animal or country from books or the internet. This teaches information gathering or an evaluation. Finally, children learn to build basic arguments. For example, teacher gave children a topic and children debate about it. This helped them express opinion with reason, which is a core critical thinking skill. So I will pass to Adriana.
Focusing on how creative and engaging activities in the classroom can help primary school students in developing their critical thinking. This can be situational patterns. These are everyday classroom activities or scenarios that help students to identify a problem and to suggest its solution. So for example, you can give a situation like your group has one glue stick but 3 people need it at the same time, so how could you make them feel, how would you make it work? In these situations, they learn to express their ideas and be considerate for other people's feelings and come up with practical solutions for their problems. And secondly, it's something that we could do with storytelling. So this can be where a class builds a story together. One person says something like, a little boy went through a red door, and then the next person has to continue the story. So this encourages imagination and continuing, and also listening closely to what somebody says before they articulate their answer. So this helps students to connect the dots. And also we could also introduce what would you do situations to students. These don't have to be serious. It can be small, relatable situations for students to think about choice and consequences. For example, if you say like, oh, you accidentally knocked over somebody's lunchbox or water bottle, and you ask like, what should you do next? They could learn about responsibility, consideration, compassion, and also empathy. And lastly, we have activities like mini SWOT activities. So for students to list out strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So for younger students, this can be of the SWOT examples. You could be through these. Children could learn to analyze the situation from different aspects and so polish their critical thinking.
Now, let us talk about the barriers to implementing critical thinking early. The first barrier is insufficient teacher training. Many primary school teachers are not fully trained to teach critical thinking skills. Their training often focuses on more content delivery and classroom discipline, rather than on inquiry-based learning or open-ended questioning. As a result, teachers may feel unprepared or uncomfortable when students ask deeper questions, which limits the opportunity for critical thinking in classrooms. The next barrier is over-reliance in memorization. In many school systems, especially exam-oriented ones, teaching is centered around memorizing facts and preparing for tests. This emphasis on rote learning leaves little room for activities that encourage analysis, creativity, or reasoning. When students are trained to memorize answers instead of understanding concepts, it becomes difficult to develop critical thinking skills from a young age. The third barrier is parental misconceptions. Some parents may assume that critical thinking is too advanced for younger children, or it distracts them from serious academic work. They may prefer traditional methods such as worksheets or copying notes. This creates pressure on teachers to avoid discussion-based learning or problem-solving activities, which further limits the development of critical thinking in primary schools. The fourth barrier is packed syllabus. Primary schools' curriculum are often overloaded with content that must be completed within a certain time frame. Because teachers feel pressured to cover the syllabus, they may prioritize finishing the topics quickly rather than exploring concepts in depth. Critical thinking skills often requires more time for discussion and reflection, and are often pushed aside to meet syllabus deadlines. The last barrier is large class sizes. Many classrooms have about 30 to 40 students, And with limited time frame, it makes it difficult for teachers to engage with each student in discussions or provide individual feedback. Critical thinking activities require interaction, group work, and personalized guidance. These tasks are much harder to manage in larger classrooms. As a result, teachers may rely on traditional whole class teaching instead.
Now I will present some common counter-arguments from people who believe critical thinking should not be taught in primary school and also explain why these concerns are unwarranted. The first counter-argument criticizes that critical thinking is too advanced for young children, but in reality, children are curious by nature and are trying to understand the world around them by asking questions, comparing, and analyzing things naturally. So critical thinking simply organizes skills they already use and guide their thinking. The second counterargument states that too early exposure may cause information overload. However, critical thinking teaches kids how to think instead of memorizing information blindly. Critical thinking can be taught through fun and simple and age-appropriate activities, and it also helps reduce confusion students may have when learning new information as children learn to sort, categorize, and understand ideas. The third counterargument argues that children should focus on foundational literacy and numeracy first. Many research shows that critical thinking helps students to analyze information and understand concepts better, which will support their academics basics. The more students think critically to understand, the more they remember the information effectively, which supports memory and information retention. This helps students to learn more efficiently as well. Now I'll be passing over to Juan for long-term impacts.
Thank you, Kumar, for the counter-argument. Now I'll be talking about the long-term impact of critical thinking. Firstly, critical thinking helps us become more informed and responsible citizens. When we learn to think clearly and look at different perspectives and question information, we can make smarter and responsible decisions. Secondly, it improves our ability to make ethical and unbiased decisions. Because after applying fairness and logic, this makes us to evaluate situations objectively. Because after learning the critical thinking skill, we will become more aware of our own biases. Thirdly, critical thinking helps us build stronger resilience when we are facing challenges, because we learn to analyze problems objectively and deeply. And we can explore different solutions. And meanwhile, we will handle challenges in a more calmer and effective way. Lastly, it makes us less likely to fall for misinformation. We will carefully check facts and identify unreliable information when we improve our ability of critical thinking.
Let me end with a bold claim. If we are not teaching critical thinking in primary school, we are already behind. Some may argue that young children aren't ready for abstract reasoning, that critical thinking is better suited for older students. But let's challenge that. Isn't curiosity the earliest form of critical thinking? When a child asks why, they are already questioning the world around them. The real question is, are we nurturing that instinct, or are we silencing it with rote learning? In a world driven by misinformation, automation, and rapid change, teaching children how to think, not just what to think, is no longer optional, but it's essential. And it's not just the school's job. Parents, teachers, and communities must work together to build environments where questioning is encouraged, not punished. We must stop treating critical thinking as a luxury skill reserved for elite classrooms or older students. It should be core competency from the very start. Because if we wait until secondary school, we are not preparing children for life. We are just preparing them for exams, which defeats the whole purpose of learning. Albert Einstein once said, education is not learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. So we are standing clearly by our point that critical thinking must be taught in primary school, not later, not eventually, but now. Thank you.